Snow is falling here in Syracuse, New York, a lot like the Islanders falling down the Eastern Conference standings. James Nichols, John Zeller here with you for a game day edition of NHP. We don't normally do this. We try to avoid it. But somebody's schedule makes it so that we had to do this tonight. So we're got to cut them some slack. We'll get through this as quickly and easily as we can, even considering the current state of the Islanders. And I think first and foremost, and I thought of this before, because oftentimes I think of a title before the show. Maybe I should do that after, but sometimes I do it before because it helps us start the show in some respects. So what I was thinking about, and the title that I chose was, is the Islanders' fall from grace inevitable? Was this bound to happen? Are the people that saw it coming in a better position? Were they right the whole time? Or I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'll pass it over to you to try to piece some of that together for an answer.
It's a really hard question. Like, hindsight's 2020, right? So you could sit here and be like, we told you, like, last year was the start of the downfall. But that's very easy to say because of the results, right? Like, there's definitely an argument to be made too that last year's season got derailed because of the plethora of obstacles, the plethora of injuries, and like it was just too much to catch up from at a certain point.
But did it show the holes and the lack of actual depth beyond, not even beyond the NHL roster, but the players that were able to kind of play through? Were they just depth for depth's sake, and they weren't depth for like actual scoring, right? Like, aside from Parise, right?
Right.
No one's really like, we didn't just get 20 goals from Cizikas. With bad teams, typically we'll say, well, someone's got to score. Right. This just didn't happen. Like, that's just not happening with the Islanders now, and that's where I'm drawing the parallel. That's what I'm seeing. Like, yeah, hindsight's 2020, but now it's a little more clear. Now that makes a little more sense.
Sure.
Year over year.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, and the thing is, it's so hard to quantify last season and this season as the same thing, right? It's not really, because, right, the Islanders have a different coach behind the bench. So let's just say Barry Trotz was still behind the bench and they ran it back with this group plus Romanov. It might be a different result, right? So maybe just this system isn't working for this group because, the system Trotz had in place was or catered a little bit to the older, slower player, whereas this one is asking them to be younger, faster players, which a lot of them on the roster just aren't that. So again, there are factors here that we just won't know because of the fact that the pure fact that there's a new coach behind the bench. So again, hindsight's 2020. It's easy to say, well, look, we told you so. Like, last year was the downfall, but again, very different styles. You're getting a better Sorokin. There are still some injuries coming into effect this year, but the crux of it dates even before last season, right? The problem for the Islanders has always been and always has been, even dating back to the conference championship days. They need scoring. They need a bona fide scorer. And I was listening to, again, I'm going to reference them every time because I just listen to them religiously, our friends Friedman and Marek, who, rightfully said this very week, they just need a guy who can go on the ice and score at the flick of a wrist, because they work so hard to score a goal that by the end, even if they do score that goal, they're drained after they score. Like, the celebration is not nearly as excited as some other teams after they score a goal because they worked so hard to score that goal.
And that might be why after the first period against Toronto, you can't sustain that. This group can't sustain that, whatever that level is, throughout the game, or it takes a while to ramp up. So they're either able to start on time and have a great first period and not sustain it for the last two periods.
Yeah.
Turn it on in the third. So it's seemingly one or the other.
And that's a great point too, because the follow-up to that from Marek or Friedman, I can't remember who it was that, after they score that goal, well, why are they giving up so many goals right away after they score? Because they're still drained from scoring that goal. And now they've given up a goal a minute later, and they're not just physically drained, they're emotionally drained now. It's like shit, we have to climb another hill again. Like here we go. So it's just they work too hard to score these goals, and I know that might sound insane because they're trying to score at the NHL level, the highest level there is, but
Well, there's a
it's
work
just
harder, not smarter. They're working harder, not
yeah.
smarter, and it should be the inverse.
But the thing is, at the NHL level, there are also these players that teams have that don't have to work as hard to score a goal because their natural shooting ability is just that good. And the player that Marek referenced over and over again was not the current state of this player, but prime Phil Kessel could just step on the ice and score a goal at will, no matter where he was, right? And they weren't saying that they should acquire this guy, or I shouldn't say that they weren't saying they shouldn't acquire this guy. They were just saying players such as a Patrick Laine are the kind of guy, one-dimensional, sure, but he's the one dimension the Islanders don't have, and he
Good point.
scores goals, and that's just the crux of his game is scoring goals, and the Islanders don't do that, so he would be a perfect fit. Now, that was just a spitballing thing, and he's not saying,
It's a for
the
instance. It's
Islanders,
not
right,
anything serious.
right. So, the fact of the matter is that the Islanders need that player, whoever that player is, even if it is Patrick Laine. It's an interesting case. What's going to happen with him in Columbus? He's not afraid of short-term contracts. He signed them over and over again. He will, I think, be an RFA still. I don't know. I don't know his deal right now, but I know it's expiring.
Young, like it's crazy.
He is still young. His contract expires either this summer or next summer, I believe. I'm not exactly sure, but Columbus has their own issues. Maybe they need to, I don't know, move on, and maybe that's something Lamoriello can hopefully try and figure out. Bottom line is they need a guy like that, a guy who can just go stand somewhere in the offensive zone and score from wherever he is because he has that ability. The Islanders don't have that.
I'm sure we'll touch on that a little bit later because we tend. I mean, that's where the conversation is going to be until it happens or the trade deadline passes and it doesn't happen. And then we push that conversation to the summer with that and any other changes. But just to bring it back to that initial question, I think it's interesting. And I think your points are well made as far as the system not fitting the team and so on and so forth. The way that I'm seeing it is that it doesn't matter what the system is with this group. It's running out. Whatever their energy level is, whatever their they were getting too tired to do the defensive game. They're too slow to play the offensive game. There's really just like a lack. I could keep saying this over and over. I'm a broken record. It is just that lack of focus. I'm really truly worried about the leadership of the group. I've given a pass to, although I've been hard on Lee and the assistant captains and so forth, but I've said for a long time, like, oh, trading Nelson's not a good idea, or trading Lee's not a good. I don't think you can, frankly. Maybe Lee over. Oh, I'm sorry, Nelson over Lee. But I've said for a long time, oh, they're future third liners. That's going to be great depth in the future and leadership, and they deserve to play their careers as New York Islanders. And if they do win a cup at some point, they deserve that cup just as much as anybody else. I'm starting to go away from that, and that makes me think that it's more than a retool that they need to do, because I don't know what that window is anymore. Like it's very unclear to me what the future of the team is, and that's a question we're going to get to in a second. But I know you want to get to some Lou Lamoriello quotes from his from his address.
The one thing I want to just finish this little segment up with, though, is that from what I'm listening to from insiders around the league, and this isn't trade talk, this is what they think the Islanders should do talk. Saravalli, Friedman, Marek, they've all said the same thing, right? There's no help coming in the pipeline. They're a few seasons removed from those runs that probably aren't going to happen again with this group. They can retool, not rebuild. They can retool this roster. They have to pour all of their assets into finding a goal scorer. And there are going to be ones available. Lou just has to figure out a way to do that. Now, good transition into what he said today. So I wanted to share this quick clip because our friend Kevin Kurz of The Athletic did ask Lamoriello about what he thinks this team needs as far as or if they have proven that the Islanders are deserved of an offseason or I'm sorry, a trade deadline acquisition, and these were his words.
The perception, I think, from the outside is that this team is in a position or should be in a position to win right now. And for a long time, I think most people have figured that means you would try to add at some point. Does this team need to show you a little bit more before you decide that you might need to add to the roster rather than perhaps sell at the deadline?
No, I think that if we can make ourselves better, whether it had been yesterday or the day before or today or tomorrow, we will definitely do that. It's at what the price you have to pay to add, and you have to make sure that whatever you add is not subtracting. And I think if you look throughout the National Hockey League, you see the exact same thing. There's no excuses because it's on me, totally on me. That's my responsibility to make us the best we possibly can, to make whatever changes we can. That's not on the coaching staff. That's not on the players, and I take that responsibility. And it's making it happen. And there's a lot of reasons why sometimes you can and you can't, and those are decisions you have to make. But I take full responsibility for whatever changes are or not made.
Is there more?
So right away, I'm obviously intrigued by the fact that he took full responsibility. Like, he doesn't often or ever say something like that. Like, I've never heard Lamoriello claim that the results happening on the ice right now are his fault. Maybe I've just never heard it, but I don't think it's happened, at least in a long while. Now, the other thing I hear is, so it's good that he noted that. It's good that he knows that what's happening on the ice is because he hasn't done anything to improve the roster. The other thing that I am skeptical of now that I've heard it again is that he said, well, if we can improve, we will. We've heard that before, right? If we can, we will. Okay. But you said that already, and you didn't, and you had opportunities to, because we saw the asking prices for a couple of these players, right? Alex DeBrincat got traded for a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick. The Islanders could have matched that, and if it would have taken an extra, I don't know, throw a prospect in there to intrigue Ottawa that much more to get an Alex DeBrincat, you could have done it. If it would have taken for Kevin Fiala a prospect and a first-round pick, you could have done it. I don't know. Like, he says, like, if we could improve, we will. And I understand he said, we have to make sure that we're adding without subtracting more than we're adding. I heard it.
But yeah, that's exactly what he said. Yeah, that's exactly what he said last year. And I think at this point, I don't know what you would be outside of a few players. Sorokin, Pelech, Pulak, Dobson, Barzell. I honestly, everybody else, and save for like Ratu and maybe some prospects, I don't really know what that would mean as far as subtracting. That's more of like a future subtraction, if that makes any sense. But outside of those types of players, I don't know that you're subtracting anything. You can figure it out. Like, if you're going to add a winger next to Barzell, move up the centers. Have Cizikas play C3, Ratu can stay at 4, Pajot can be at 2, and then you have a true first line. Barzell can still stay at center, and you can, if that's you traded Nelson. I don't think that's actually what you'd be able to do, but like, that's my point is, I don't know what he means by that, because unless he means, oh yeah, they're asking for Dobson for Bo Horvat. Well, yeah, that's probably a non-starter. That makes a whole lot of sense. The Rangers wouldn't trade Adam Fox or Keandre Miller for, I don't even know, make up a player, like not Connor McDavid, but like who's a 30, 40
David Pastrnak.
I don't think they would do that. I don't think the Islanders should do that either, right? Like, so I don't know. I don't really know what he means by we don't want to add. Like, we don't want to add if it means that we have to subtract. That's a trade, dude. Like,
I was
that's
going to
what
say,
that is.
it sounds like he's waiting or trying to make the perfect trade happen for him, right? It's one of those things where he's like, he wants it to be lopsided in his favor, but that's just not how these GMs aren't stupid, and they're not going to just give you something for, the hell of it. Now, you know, the Islanders have been linked to guys like Timo Meyer, right? Obviously, AGM of the Sharks, Tim Burke, was at, UBS Arena. That's not by accident. Well, guess what? I spoke to Tim Burke last night at the Prudential Center because he was scouting the New Jersey Devils. And the Devils, I hate to tell you this, have deeper pockets than the Islanders. They can afford to fork over more for Timo Meyer. Do they have the appetite to? That's up to Tom Fitzgerald. But the Islanders almost have no choice, right? They have to give up whatever they can to get a guy like that. However, their most is second best to whatever a third or fourth tier package from the New Jersey Devils will be. So they're stuck in this precarious predicament right now where even though they might be ready to fork something over, other teams around them, especially in the East, have deeper pockets.
And they're ready to pull the trigger. I think that's a big difference too.
Yeah.
Lamoriello is like trying to be a shark out there, and other teams are being a little more agile. Yes, they might have deeper pockets. I think that's fine. They're also probably looking to make multiple moves. The Islanders need to make a single move. They don't need 25 goal scorers. They really don't. That's not necessarily going to move the needle. They have Lee, Nelson, Palmieri, arguably Parise to a certain degree. Like they have the scorers, the secondary scoring. You can even add in Beauvillier to some degree. Like, a secondary scoring, tertiary scoring that can put the puck in the net. That's they have that. That's the Islanders aren't trying to add depth here. They're loaded with depth to the point where it's not working anymore. It's not even, we joked, I think, in years past that they had 3-second lines. They're all acting kind of like third lines now. They all kind of look the same. And they're like you said earlier, they're working awful hard. And it's hard to have those results every single shift. I'm far from a professional player myself, but when I play, it's even hard to do it then. It's it's obviously at like a very dumbed down level and just watered down and terrible, but you can't go out there every single shift. Even at, professional athletes, like I don't expect them to be able to kind of have their foot on the gas the entire game. There are some parts of the game where you have to play smarter, but they don't have that either. And that's really hard. Like if you have to have your game ebb and flow, then you got to be able to play smart, and we super saw them not do that last game.
Now, here's the next thing that I wanted to bring up to you, because later in that conference with Lamoriello, someone asked him about the prospects that have been called up. Of note to you, who has been, doing well in your eyes for, of the Ratus, the Holmstroms, the Boldukes, the Wotherspoons, and he didn't name anyone specifically, but he did give a lot of credit to them as a whole. He said, we've asked them to come up and whatever position that they've been put in, they have done well, right? And I don't think that he's talking about William Dufour, but I did see something earlier today that he and Lamoriello spoke, and Lamoriello was had some high praise for him. But the thing is, the Islanders are showing that they have a little bit more depth than even we initially thought at the beginning of this season in these prospects. Now, my question is, do they have the ability to now take these guys like a Bolduc or even a Wotherspoon, who in my opinion has been a pleasant surprise, and say, well, you know what? The Toronto Maple Leafs are willing to pay us a first-round pick for Scott Mayfield. Okay. It's time. That's just my take. Aturatu just dressed for his first 10th. Aturatu just dressed for his 10th game. He's burning a year of his contract. No reason he shouldn't stay with the Islanders for the rest of the year now. Now they have a fifth center in the fold. They have the flexibility at this point to do something.
Yeah, I don't think you're trading any the other centers, which is a little bit of the problem. So like Pajot probably doesn't have a ton of value. Someone just wrote about him too, that he's kind of like fallen off, and at the time and for 2 or 3 seasons he was really good, but it kind of just fell off there. I don't know about just leave Ratu up because Cizikas is only on that first line because they need a winger to skate with Barzell, and that has that speed and the tenacity. So I'm not entirely sure that that's right at the moment, but it's difficult. Like I said, I don't even know what it means to not subtract if you're going to add. Like they need to make some significant changes on this roster for them to be able to move forward.
Nassauman Hockey is brought to you by DraftKings. 4 NFL teams, 2 conference championship games, and only a few more shots to win big on the playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Counting down to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Not a new customer? You can still feel the conference championship thrills with stepped-up same-game parlays. Take your shot at an even bigger NFL payout and boost your winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. Joe Burrow and the Bengals are finally looking like a lock to get to the NFL championship, so why not bet on Cincinnati? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. New customers can bet $5 on the conference championships and get $200 in free bets instantly, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
So James, for the team to move forward, we're talking about potential trades and really just the internal pieces there on the first half of the show, or near the middle of the show rather. Moving players around, how can we make it work? What does subtraction mean if you're going to add? Where does the team go from here? Based on the packages that you're seeing, even if they're just kind of like insidery rumor stuff, what are the Timo Meyers, even the Patrick Kanes or the Tarasenkos, the last 2 of which I'm not personally interested in becoming Islanders because of their age. Kane maybe has a little bit longer shelf life. I'm not entirely sure on Tarasenko. He could just hit a wall, but
yeah,
far be it from me to really know what his career trajectory is because he's still playing pretty well. Of the players that you think, and go out on a limb to some degree, I mean, there's like Bo Horvat is available. I don't think he's been available. The Canucks have not made him available to talk to other GMs for extensions, which is, as we know, a big Lamoriello hang-up, which could be the hang-up with pretty much anybody. He wants to make a specific deal, and he cuts himself off at the knees when he has very specific ideas in mind, whether it's his last year or not. I know we talked about that on the last episode. The future of the Islanders, I think he's starting like he means to continue, kind of thing. And whether he's here next year or not, he's acting as if he's going to be, and that's probably right. I mean, I don't think he's trying to save his job, but I'll let you answer the question. But before I rant for 10 minutes, where does the team go from here?
It's a good question, and he did end the conference off today by saying you look at both the now and the future when trying to improve your team. So he does claim to have that knowledge in the back of his mind of like, I'm not trying to make a move that's going to save us right now. It's going to be a good move for now and for tomorrow, which I think is the right mentality to have. So you hope that it is something that he does do. I think that eliminates the idea of Vladimir Tarasenko because he's 31, he's injury prone, and he's due for a contract. And how much older do you want this team to get? I don't know that it's the right idea to trade for him and sign him long term. Now, if it is just a desperation move to get the season back on track and you could get Tarasenko on the cheap because he's walking into UFA, sure, you do it, right? For the couple of months. But long term, if that's what you're thinking, like, look, this might be controversial. Maybe you're going to hate it, but you put all your chips on the table for a guy like Timo Meyer. Like, that's the move, in my opinion, because he's 26. All of the advanced analytics plus the eye test suggest that he's a difference maker, right? He's just fantastic. He's worth every penny. A lot of people are worried about the $10 million qualifying offer. I'll tell you that he's not going to sign a deal worth $10 million with anybody. It's probably going to be somewhere in the 8.5, 9 range, which is fine, because look at the teams around the league who have these players. They're paying them that money. So if you want a guy like that, you're going to have to pay up. It's probably going to take, it's definitely going to take the first round pick. It's probably going to take Oliver Wahlstrom, and maybe it's going to take William Defoe. You friggin' do it. You have no choice at this point. You could afford to move William Defoe, because his ceiling, in my opinion, I have hopes that he'll be an NHLer, but his ceiling is like a third liner. And, I'd be surprised if he was a 30 goal scorer. I could see him scoring 20, which is good. That's a good player. But how long he can do that for, how long he can sustain that success, how quickly even get there, I don't even know. Timo Meyer's on track for 45 goals on a bottom 5 team. He not only plays well on his own end and scores in different ways, he can shoot the puck, and he's that kind of guy who we mentioned earlier with the flick of a wrist can change a game, but he also drives the net. He also scores in close. And he's also really good in his own end, in all 3 zones. So he's the kind of guy that you break the bank for. And that kind of move, a 26-year-old who can grow with Barzal beyond his line and can knock everyone on the depth chart down a notch, and now everyone kind of is in the place that they're supposed to be. Maybe. It just changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I think you make the room for that contract, right? Like, if you have to attach picks for a Bailey, or yeah, you attach a pick for a Bailey, or what do you do with Anthony Beauvillier, right? That's 4.1, and it's only through next year. But if you're gonna make that trade for Timo, you need to do that sooner than later. And then maybe Parise comes off the books. He's still playing well. I frankly keep him around. We were gonna talk about this later. Like, I honestly think Clutterbuck's done for his own sake. This is not a numbers thing. For his own health and safety and his family and like having a regular life.
Yeah.
He's had a rough go. I don't want to see him not. I don't know. We see a lot of like the tougher players go down and they're in really rough shape and they get like, don't do it, dude. Just back injuries, and who knows what he's going through this year, and surgeries. Yikes. I'm upset. I don't really know how to feel about it, because he's been with the Islanders and he deserves just like anybody else. He was a big driving force behind this team being who they were. Having said that, getting his close to $2 million off the books would be something. Rat, who's on a really nice deal. But I think it's still Bailey and Beauvillier holding the team back from ultimately doing that. Every forward, save for Parise, is on the books through for next season. It's the season after that where Beauvillier and Bailey are done. That might make it easier to move them at the draft or at the deadline, right? Even if the Islanders are going to go for it, I think you do it. Like, I think you find a way, even if it's to a contender in the West that needs. God, Beauvillier would stink, but if you can get assets for him and flip it for Timo and get him signed, where do I sign? Where do I do it?
The thought process for me is there's 2 avenues. One, you don't have to wait for the summer. You can get ahead of this now, even if you're going into the trade deadline as a seller, right? With the mentality of, we're not going to make the playoffs. We need to fix this team in the summer. However, the trade deadline's coming up and the Sharks are looking to move this guy. And, Mike Grier might be granting other teams the ability to talk to him and get an extension done before the trade. That's I have to act now kind of move, because he's the perfect kind of player. So what can I do to make that happen now? Now, if that doesn't happen, right? Let's say Timo Meyer goes to another team because the Sharks just quite frankly like their offer better. Because let's face it, other teams have that ability that the Islanders don't have to offer something better. You go into the summer after the trade deadline that's coming up with a plethora of assets because at this trade deadline, Lamoriello should be moving Scott Mayfield. He should be moving Semyon Varlamov. He should be moving Zach Parise, right? Believe it or not, in this bloated market that is the NHL these days, Zach Parise can get a second round pick. I'm convinced Zach Parise can get a second round pick from another team.
And that doesn't mean you don't re-sign him in the offseason. That doesn't mean you don't bring him back either.
Correct. And you can say that about any of the players. I'm convinced Scott Mayfield at least nets the Islanders a first round pick. I'm convinced that Semyon Varlamov gets the Islanders at least a first round pick. Could you imagine going into this summer with 3 first round picks, 2 second round picks, and whatever else might be thrown into those deals? You're talking 3 first round picks in the what's been called the best draft since, I don't know, Connor McDavid was brought into the league. You got to do it. Like, and now you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, one of 2 things is going to happen. I can use these draft picks to trade and get somebody significant, or I'm drafting some of the best players that are being said to come out of this draft, and I'm setting us up well for the future. And the crazy thing here is, too, you can still do both. That's secret option C. I have 3 first round draft picks, ours, X team and Y team. I could use 2 of them, package them for something crazy. I don't know, friggin' David Pastrnak. The Bruins and Dave Pastrnak had a fallout. He's gonna be available. I'm going to trade the 2.
Did that actually?
No. That's me spitballing.
Oh, okay. Don't do that.
That's not a real thing.
I wasn't on Twitter like for 2 days. So like, I don't know what's going on.
No. Hypothetical. Right? Oh, they had a fallout. David Pastrnak's available. Here's 2 first round picks, Boston. I'm going to take David Pastrnak and I'm going to sign him to whatever the hell he wants. Right? And even if it's not that extreme, let's just say it's Nikolai Ehlers from the Winnipeg Jets. Here's 2 first round picks. Thank you for Nikolai Ehlers. That's house money that you just sent them because you got the 2 first round picks, and you could still have your own or one of the other picks if you want to keep the higher one, whatever. And you're now adding to the prospect pool. This is the approach that has to happen. Either you go all in and get the player, even if you know you're not going to make the playoffs, you still get the player to set yourself up, or you move the expiring contracts because those 3 players that I said in Mayfield, Varlamov, and Parise are worth something heading into the trade deadline. Any team would be happy to take them. They'll fork over those valuable assets that you can use at the draft.
Yeah. So I have some leading content into my next question. The Islanders are currently they're I hate the wild card view. It does not show you anything. So maybe they're in 11th place in the East, behind Florida, Buffalo, Washington in that order. Washington occupies that last spot with 56 points. The Islanders have 51. Florida has 52. Buffalo has 53. The Islanders have played 49 games. Washington 50, but Buffalo 47. And Pittsburgh with 56 points also has 47 games played. So that's not in their favor. Having said that, what's the point where the season can no longer be salvaged and one of your scenarios actually kicks in? Because that's where I'm curious, right? I don't even think, when we're recording tonight, the puck just dropped a few minutes ago. This week's podcast wasn't going to be about the Ottawa game anyway. If they blow Ottawa out, it means nothing, right? There's a lot that needs to happen for the season to turn around. It's not even 3 wins out of 4, right? Like you're talking about 7, 8 wins out of 10, 9 wins out of 11 games. Like you're talking about and beating the right teams, beating the teams in front of you that you're battling in these spots, right? The upcoming games that they still have left against Washington are super important. Any games against the teams in front of them that they can salvage. They recently lost games against Pittsburgh, Florida, and Buffalo and Washington, right? So they've kind of put themselves in this place. The trade deadline is in March, early March,
March 3rd.
March 3rd. When at what point is the season no longer salvageable?
I would say, we'd have to reflect on that at the end of this month, right? I shouldn't say after the All-Star break, the first week of the All-Star break. Let's look there, right? Because they have Ottawa tonight, Detroit Friday. These are two games the Islanders should win. They have Vegas on Saturday in a back-to-back, right? That's going to be a tough one for them. Then the All-Star break. They come back, they see Philly. That's a game the Islanders should win. We're talking, and then the rest of the week they have Seattle, tough one. Vancouver, they should win, although the new coach effect might kick in for them and they might go on a bit of a run here. Montreal the following Saturday. Ottawa the following Tuesday. Then they hit Pittsburgh, Boston. It gets a little tougher. They need to win in their next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In their next 8 games, they need to win 6 of them. That's asking a lot of a team who's just lost 9 or is it 11 of their last or 10 of their last 12?
They've won 2 games this month.
Yeah, so 10 of their last 12.
What the rest of them are, that tells you it's ridiculous.
So they need to win 6 of their next 8 in order for Lamoriello to, and this is my thinking. In order for Lamoriello to turn around and say the season's not lost, they need to win 6 of their next 8. If they can beat the teams they're supposed to beat, and at least play meaningful games against the Seattles and the Vegases, that's enough. That should be enough for Lamoriello to turn around and say, okay, this team needs help against the brutes. Let me help them. They beat who they're supposed to. They hung in but lost with the brutes. Let's help them. I'm gonna go get Timo Meier. That's how I see it. If by what's the date? If by the 17th of February, this team has lost, which I think is completely possible, 5 or 6 of their next 8, that's it. See you, Mayfield. See you, Varlamov. See you, Parise. Thank you for your services. Maybe you can come back in the summer. That's up to you. We'll talk. But I need assets because I need to fix this for next year. And quite frankly, I have, thoughts on whether I think it's going to be him or not. I don't think it will be. But that's how I see it playing out. I think they have until the 17th of February because after that, the schedule, forget it. Pittsburgh, Boston, Pittsburgh, Winnipeg, LA, Winnipeg, Minnesota, all playoff teams. All playoff teams. And then they get to March. And the deadline is swiftly approaching at that point. So March 17th is there. Actually, it's February 15th. February 15th is the day because if after the 14th they would have completed those 8 games I spoke about, they'll know where they're at heading into the 17th against Pittsburgh, right? The 15th and the 16th is what I'm looking at to say Lou should know by then this team needs help. And he should know we can get somebody and go on a little bit of a run here with a little bit of a boost. By February 15th and 16th, a direction needs to be established.
I could believe that. I think that's actually a little late. But, given the All-Star break, that's only a few weeks before the trade deadline. And I guess that doesn't mean that Lamoriello is on the phones between now and then or hasn't already been. And he's just not getting the types of deals that he wants to make. And to a degree, that's entirely fair. I'm not entirely sure what that date is. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. I can deal with the 17th um, of February. That is, it might be the next time they play Ottawa. I don't know that one game against Pittsburgh is going to make all the difference. But by the time we recorded episode that week, presumably the 15th of that week, or the 15th exactly on that Wednesday, we should know. But either way, I think that week, to your point, they go and they play Pittsburgh. Going into that game, if you have players sitting or anything like that, I wouldn't be surprised. If they're looking to be traded or all the players are called up or who's healthy scratched and this and that. Um, they might be trying to make those deals as early as possible to try to get ahead of the game. So I could believe it. Sometime that week is that it feels late. I think the All-Star break really kind of changes the outlook of February just a little bit.
Right.
Yeah,
Because
that's rough.
they're not playing.
It's not a
They're
lot of
not playing
games.
the whole first week. That's the thing. Like they're right. There's 3 games, including tonight before the All-Star break, and then it's 5
exactly
games post All-Star game that they have to make this decision. So in total, 8.
Yeah, I don't see them winning 6 games. I think they need to win 7, frankly, but like, I don't see them winning 5. So
Yeah, I agree.
I don't, and unfortunately, none of the teams that they're playing between now and then are the teams in front of them. So you're kind of at the whim of what they're doing as well, because if they play just as well, and the Islanders put themselves in this position, but if any of those teams are playing well, it doesn't really matter what you do. You're
Right.
kind of just being in that mushy 10th place that doesn't really mean anything, or 11th place, whatever I said it was. 5th. God, I hate the wild card view. You kind of have to go back and forth. 11th in the conference, whatever it is. Multiple points behind, and without games in hand. They have games in hand on you. It's kind of rough, especially with a lot of the same issues keep happening. They got beat real bad the other night against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Sorokin couldn't save them. Toronto just, after the second period started, they didn't even claw their way back. It was just, Islanders kind of just gave it to them. They just kind of handed it over, and that's after a really good first period where I felt pretty good about that team, that in the Islanders.
That's the thing, though. That's the thing. The first periods haven't been the problem. It's been sustaining it. It's been having that instinct to pounce and to continue that upward direction that they're trending in. But again, it boils back down to what we mentioned earlier in the show, that they're working so hard to score these goals that they're friggin' drained.
Yeah.
And that's why they can't sustain it.
And it's a reversal of the beginning of the season. A huge reversal. So the starts haven't even been that good, but like they're just so much better than what they've been. Toronto aside, but they've had some pretty good starts. A lot of games they're okay. It's just in comparison to the rest of the game, it looks amazing. So especially against Toronto, that drop off was significant. And you did see Pelech back in the lineup. We do have Palmieri back in the lineup. Ratu is back. Holmstrom is also back, and he had a great goal. What game was that? A couple nights ago. Was that Carolina? A little bit of a toe drag move, or maybe it was Buffalo.
Holmstrom, you're talking about?
Holmstrom. Yeah, a very nice toe drag.
Carolina. That was an amazing goal.
It was second or third of the season. He's played quite a bit, but I think he's on that line next to Ratu with Martin, which is interesting. I don't think they have much of a choice there, but I like the kids playing with each other. I don't know that they've been very effective, but get him the experience, get him a few minutes in the show, and get him on the NHL roster. It's not going to hurt. They're not a liability. They're not playing enough to be a liability. And so that's good enough for me. Just you're going out there to get your cup of coffee with in the NHL on NHL ice, and don't let any goals. You're there to get experience and let some other players rest for a second, I think that's perfectly fine. And they've done a pretty good job. I don't think, I think we have high expectations for Ratu, but I don't think he's going to be setting the world on fire. So, temper your expectations. He's a good feature piece if he's even still around, and that's tough to consider given the depth after Ratu, Bolduc, Dufour, and Holmstrom ? I'm not sure. The Bolduc's looked good. Wallerspoon also looked good. I'm not entirely sure why they called up Bolduc and sent down
Cholosky.
Cholosky, because he looked really good. Like, he was not the reason. And talk about a player that you could leverage for a second or a third round pick. Play him for a few games. You played him for a game or 2 games, and you just
I
sent them back down.
do.
Like, I don't understand. Like, they're yo-yoing players here. I get it. Give Bulldog a chance. Like, I don't know. He's having he was an AHL All-Star. Keep him there. Let him just ride
Well,
the season out. Like,
I
Waterspoon
do
was
wonder.
fine, but Cholosky was great. Like, he
I,
looked
I
good.
agree. I agree, but I do wonder if there's a bit of showcasing going on here.
Yeah, but
Like
keep him up then.
here's our no for Bolduc. Here's our AHL All Star, our former second round pick, 2-time AHL All Star. Take a look at this kid. He looks real good. I know it's been 3 periods that I've watched him play, but he played real well. He did not look out of place. He looked poised. He moved the puck well. He defended well. I liked his board play. Like, I think that he is going to be a player in this league. And whether or not the Islanders should trade a guy like that, if they have that luxury, I don't know. But if it gets you a Timo Meyer, you do it.
Yeah, that's fair. Given that you do have Wallerspoon, you do have Aho. Maybe you keep Cholosky around in the future. So maybe I'm thinking about showcasing the wrong player here. Given that Bulldog's a little bit younger, that's fine. I don't mind that if it avoids you having to give up Dufour or Ratu, and instead you're giving up a defensive piece, and they have a lot more depth and some younger guys there.
Right.
Even if you give up Mayfield, that you know again, I kind of let that happen and see where it lands. I guess you can figure it out.
Well, and
Um,
that's why I think this revolving door of debuts and prospects coming up is happening so much on the blue line. That's their position of strength to trade from. The Wotherspoon came up and it was like, okay, he fits. And it's not just like, oh, he fits, he's good enough to get the job done. It's like, okay, he's actually he could stick around. Cholosky, they know what they have in him, I think, right? You said he played real well. I agree, but he's been around the league for a little while. They know he can hang to some degree. Teams have seen him and know his game a little bit already. He came up, he helped out a little bit. Okay, now let's see what we have in Bolduc. Is he going to stay with us? Do we showcase him for other teams, or are we seeing what he can do for us and saying, okay, listen, Scott, thank you for your services. We're going to get some assets here for you. Like, there's a lot of avenues here with showcasing and seeing what they have in these players, either for themselves or for trade. And that's why I think there's so much turnover on the blue line right now.
I think that's a pretty good point. It could be any one of them. It depends on what team is interested in what. It could be Cholosky, it could be Bolduc, it could be Wallerspoon. I happen to think it's probably going to be a Bolduc or something like that. Cholosky just as depth, but that means you're going to get a lower pick for him. So I don't know that that's 100% what the Islanders want. If you're going to package a first and Bolduc for a forward plus whatever, if that's where it comes down to, yeah, you need, that's the type of player that you need to give up if it's not going to be a forward, and the other team's looking for defensive prospect depth, then that's essentially what you need to do. And I'm clicking around for a second because I wanted to bring up um, Palmieri's return, and I wanted to double check. It looks like it was the Toronto game, and I
Yeah.
can't believe that was like a night or two ago, and I'm like completely blanking on it. But he looked good.
Yeah.
He was real hungry. That he had a lot of chances. That game could have been way more in the Islanders' favor, and that may have been able to be enough to get them through the rest of the game. Samsonov made some really good saves. He made a couple great passes too. That little spin move pass uh, out of the zone that led to a goal. I forget who that was, but maybe Nylander. I can't remember. But Palmieri looked good. I forgot. You kind of think of him from last season where he was snake bitten. He does catch on at the end of the season, and had an okay start this year. You just kind of forget who he is a little bit because he's just been in and out for a long time. But he looked good, and that's the type of like middle six player that you can trade upon. You can trade a Bavilier and or a Bailey, knowing that you have a guy like that. Um, is he older? Yes, but he can still play in a third line, and he's still going to be really good. I really liked him when he was with uh, Parise and Peugeot. That P3 line was great, and
Yeah.
that's the depth I'm okay with. And he's good on the second line. I believe he's on the second line tonight against Ottawa. I think that's great. Pellick looked no worse for wear, thank God. He looked fine. It's so bad. I have such hope for the team still somehow. Like I know they're good. I hate looking at this
Again,
roster and thinking it sucks and it's not working, and I'm mad at the leadership, and it's the coaches aren't working either, and the GM, what the hell, and they need to add players, but maybe Bailey's the only one, and I've had mixed feelings about him. Bavillier's just been a massive disappointment, but everybody else, I'm like pulling for them. Like I want them to do it on their own. I don't want
well,
like
here's the thing. Here's the thing.
it's so aggravating.
The reason why you have hope for this team is because we can read between the lines right now a little bit, right? Like I said, Bolduc has been recalled and they're showcasing him a little bit. That point has been proven even a little further right now as we speak, because who's quarterbacking power play number 1 at this very moment? Samuel Bolduc. What do they have in this kid? They think they have something. And whether that's for them or for another team, they're showcasing right now. And I think that's why you have a little bit of hope for them. And I don't think that's unjustified. I think that again, I've been saying this, the right supporting cast is there. The right pieces that you need for a centerfold are there. They're just missing one or two key components. And that starts with goal scoring and ends it with goal scoring too. It starts and ends with goal scoring. They have the franchise center in Matthew Barzal. They have the franchise goaltender in Ilya Sorokin. They have the supporting cast. Brock Nelson's an excellent supporting cast as a second line center. Anders Lee is a perfectly fine second liner. Kyle Palmieri being on the third line, if they acquire a right winger, is perfect. Peugeot, perfect for support. They need top line guys.
They're
And that's why you
essentially two top line wingers and a third line wing.
and the thing is too,
And that might
like,
be Wallstrom, but to be, we can always see on that.
Barzell might not be able to do it on his own, elevate everyone on his line, but if you get two guys, that's going to elevate a third. And let's just say, for argument's sake, somehow they do get, a Timo Meyer and don't end up actually having to trade an Anthony Beauvillier, and they can somehow keep him in the fold. I think that him on a line with Meyer and Barzell is just a really good trio. And I think that you'll see I think you'll see a little bit more out of Anthony Beauvillier, just based on the pure fact that he'll be playing in the offensive zone more. He'll have a bunch more chances. He'll be feeding a guy who, in Timo Meyer, who just doesn't miss. Here's a statistic on Timo Meyer and why I'm banging that drum so hard. And I've been banging this drum for a couple of years now, but David Pastrnak is on pace for 394 shots. Timo Meyer is on pace for 375. Here's the full list of 375 plus shot players since the year 2005. Number 1, Alex Ovechkin in 2008-2009. Number 2, Alex Ovechkin in 2007-2008. Number 3, Alex Ovechkin in 2005-2006. 4, 5, 6, 7, Alex Ovechkin. That's the list. This is the player you're getting in Timo Meyer if you acquire a guy like him.
Yeah, it's got to be that level, and I think we'll just repeat that until it actually happens. It has to be that level of forward, and then in the offseason, you can always sign somebody else, and that's why, like, I think you put Bailey and Bavilier out the pasture, and you sign. I think you can get something for Bavilier, and maybe I'd love for them to figure out a player that they can swap with on another team that also needs a fresh start. with similar contracts, like another $4 million player?
I have it. And then it doesn't have to be a $4 million player. Jacob Vrana, go get him for 50% off. Because I've looked into this a little bit. He's doing well in the A. His character issues off the ice are said to be behind him. He is, when he's playing at his best, and when he's on the ice, when in his sample size before he went to the player assistance program, he's proven to be one of the better goal scorers in the league. His goals per 60, he's like ridiculous. He's like, he might be the best in the NHL in terms of goal per 60, which means if you don't know what that means, how often you score a goal versus your ice time, right? He might not be the best goal scorer in the league, but he's the most efficient at doing it with his ice time. He's really, really good at it.
I'm saying, like, he could need a change of scenery. I'm talking about a trade.
Well,
like
that's what I'm saying.
Bavilier for Verona is what you're saying?
For Verona at 50% off. Because at worst, you're getting another Anthony Bavilier. At best, you're getting a guy who can elevate his game to be a 30 goal scorer, which he has been before.
What's his, how old is he and what's his contract?
He's got 2 years left at $5.25 million. He is, I believe, the same age as Anthony Bavilier, or maybe a year older.
Yeah, he's 26 now that I'm looking. I don't know if you necessarily go for that. And he turns 27. It looks like.
This is in addition to a Timo Meier. Could you imagine a line of Jacob Vrana, Matthew Barzal, and Timo Meier? Holy shit!
I think maybe
piles of goals.
It's possible. I don't know. I think you go for bigger fish, like somebody else that again is. That could work. I don't know about anybody else. I don't have a really good example, and I don't like just not thinking an idea is good without having a rebuttal to it. But in this case, I think I'll go for it. Bavilier for somebody else, and do a swap and see if that works. It's either that or just try to get his money off the books and bring in somebody else altogether. That might be. And the thing is, I think you need to do that at the trade deadline so teams feel like they're getting value for him, right? Bailey is gonna. I don't know what you do, Arizona, or I'm not really sure where he could land. I'm not sure that anybody wants him necessarily. I don't know what you would need to attach to him to make that happen, but with Bavilier, I think you just collect as much of an asset as you can and get the cap room. That's your addition. To go, use Lamoriello's words, that's your addition, and then you have the room to really add something on the other side. They're not going to make the playoffs this year. I don't think. I think you make a move this year regardless. If you can make it, just get the player. Like you said, it doesn't really matter if you're going to make the playoffs or not. If you think you can make the team better for next year, do that, especially ahead of a deep draft and whatever. Do it now. You don't have to wait for the draft to do that.
Here's a name. Alex DeBrincat. Expiring contract. Ottawa has yet to sign him. I think they're having a little bit of trouble getting that done. Alex DeBrincat.
You could if it's a sign and trade. What's his cap now?
$9 million.
I mean, that's somebody that you can certainly.
No, sorry. His salary is $9 million. His cap hit is 6.4.
I mean, if you can, I don't know that that has nothing to do with Bavilier necessarily, but yeah, you can make that trade happen for sure.
You could package something with Bavilier to get it to Brinket in an expiring contract kind of situation there.
Yeah, but it's a sign and trade, so like and Ottawa knows that. Lamoriello is not operating under a place of strength there necessarily because other teams know. And they have to, because they're going to give him the ability to do that. They're going to give him permission to do that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but yeah, it's Bavilier. That's quite a bit to give up because it's going to be Bavilier, a prospect, and a pick. If they even want Bavilier, I think that's the biggest question about this is you don't really know what these other teams even need. That's kind of the biggest. I think you need to look into what some of these other teams are interested in because Ottawa's also not making the playoffs. So they don't really have an incentive to keep DeBrincat, they have an incentive to get assets. I don't know that Beauvillier for the Ottawa Senators makes a lot of sense.
Well, I'm thinking from the perspective of Ottawa. So DeBrincat's still 24, 25, same age as Beauvillier. I think they want to keep DeBrincat. They're a young team that's growing, but I think they're having trouble figuring out how. Beauvillier has another year on his deal, so I think they could figure that out.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's a thought, and it definitely is another name you can throw in the mix there if it's just not going to work out for DeBrincat in Ottawa as far as the contract is concerned. Yeah, that could be something as well. I think that there are a lot of different options, and you can concoct a million different trade scenarios. It really just comes down to whether or not Lamoriello is willing to actually do it,
right?
And then if he's going to get permission, there's a lot of what ifs that ultimately lead to the trades with Lamoriello. So we're gonna have a long few weeks here before the trade deadline to see if they can even tread water. I think that's even just not continuing to fall down the standings is going to be something of an achievement for the Islanders through the middle of next month. Before we wrap it up here, I think. Well, any last thoughts before we move on? Well, before we end the show,
that's really it. I just think there's going to be there's been and will continue to be an evaluation process in the next couple weeks. Because it's Lamoriello's last year of his deal, I think something will happen. Just not sure what that is yet. Because, like I said, I think February 15th is like that date that they'll know what they need to do. And that's when I think things will begin to transpire.
We'll see. I mean, the countdown's on. It's really not that far away, and especially with the All-Star break and no games. Between now and next week, I'm hoping to book a very cool guest. I'm not going to say who it is because I really hope they come on there. You know about it because I talked to you about it. You're looking at me like we haven't done it. I'll tell you after we.
Oh, I remember.
After we hang up here. We had a good conversation. I think that they'd be really good. You definitely know who this person is. So we'll see if that shakes out. I'm sure they'll come on eventually. I think we had it booked tentatively for the next episode during the break, but their schedule is kind of all over the place. So because just who they are, and that'll make sense when when you hear the name. And in the meantime, before next episode, hopefully we can get that on the books. I'm sure we'll make an announcement beforehand. Please rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Nassman Hockey. You can find James' work at The Fourth Period. I'm going to start doing a few more blogs here and there for NHP. There might be some crossover with Isles Fix. Definitely check out Isles Fix in the meantime. Support all of your favorite Islander people. We saw what happens. Some of this stuff, luckily Lighthouse is sticking around, but the stuff with SB Nation really sucks. Support Eyes, support the hockey writers where we both used to write. All of these people work really hard and they're not compensated, and interact with them. Be positive. I know you think every single Islanders person is a moron that gets behind a microphone or behind a keyboard and whatever, but be positive. We're all on the same side. We're all trying to do the same thing. You don't need to put every really mean thought on the internet. Or even think them at all, but we're all trying to work together here. We're all trying to create content. I don't think there's ill will between anybody. So make sure you're supporting everybody. It's even Bar Down Breakdown, who is an Islander podcast, kind of, but they do the music thing. And Mikey does Isles Meetups, and you all know who Isles Meetups is and who Mikey is. So make sure you support them too. And a lot of good hardcore music and bands. And they do shows now. I don't know if you saw that. They do some pretty sick shows.
Yeah, I did.
So definitely make sure to check that out. I got to get down to a game in Carolina one of these years so I can experience Isles Meetups in all its glory and from where it started. But we'll figure that out in the future. James, bring us home.
Until next time, all. Let's go, Lou. Figure it out. Get something done.